Right.
It's anyways. I'm ranting right now. I'm very sorry. So yeah.
No, yeah, that was great. I think something we could focus on, which Han actually talks about a lot, especially in the Agony of Eros, is the modern notion of authenticity.
Mhm.
Actually, maybe it's not Agony of Eros, but whatever, authenticity and its relation to what you're talking about with uh, liberation and all these ideals. And I'm glad you mentioned St. Paul because obviously one of St. Paul's essential themes is that to find your authentic self is
Mhm.
to be in Christ, right? Is to
Right.
be in this community. And when you have that higher ideal, then you are able to have a hierarchy of an objective morality and all this stuff because
Right.
it's basically how to what degree do you embody your telos, your the ideal, which is obviously is Christ. So from a Christian perspective, authenticity, finding yourself, is not yourself is not some deep hidden gnostic inner truth that you need to find,
Yeah.
nor is it
Yeah.
nor is
Yeah.
it expressed in some form of just expressing yourself outwardly, like liberating yourself from whatever oppressive systems, whatever, like the girl boss
Right.
stuff, whatever form it takes. So I think authenticity is I really like Han's critique of authenticity. Zizek basically has the exact same critique.
Yes.
Actually, what Zizek says about his critique of transgender ideology is that there's this idea that transgender people have that if they only uh, do the surgery or whatever, they're going to find their authentic self.
Right.
Meanwhile, if you actually look at the statistics, there's more suicides after transitioning.
The 40% meme. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
right. It, authenticity is not
Which is
found.
tragic. We people make fun of it online, but it is incredibly
No,
tragic.
yeah, it is tragic. And like
As
what
a
Zizek.
Christian, you should pray for these people. Yeah.
Absolutely, absolutely, yeah. And well, Zizek is not a Christian, so what he says is
Oh
that
yeah, he's
well,
well. I mean, his god is Stalin, maybe, but
exactly,
it's,
yeah.
yeah, yeah.
He basically wants he actually has a very like this is something I've in all my videos I've made on Zizek. Zizek has a very good uh philosophy of the fall. Like he is a
Yes.
good description of the fall. But what he does, like if you actually read Less Than Nothing, reconciliation, like Hegelian reconciliation, absolute knowing is just
Hmm.
accepting the necessity of the fall. It's just
Yes.
embrace.
Yes.
But obviously for us, there is a way out of the fall.
Hmm.
But when you
Hmm.
don't, when you're like Zizek and you don't believe in any form of authenticity. For Zizek, there is no true self. All you are this desiring being chasing after what isn't ultimately there. And
Yeah,
Jacques
sex in the
Lacan,
absolute he goes into it as well, very
exactly,
well.
yeah, like the objet A, you can't find it. So there is no true authenticity for Zizek. I think this is better than the neoliberal idea that somehow you'll find your true authentic self deep down or in whatever
Hmm.
hedonistic activities you want to chase after. But I think this is another connection that Han has with Christianity, where in the same way we would say true authenticity is not found. Well, it's only found in Christ, in community. I think Han would say something similar, but with Han,
Hmm.
it's more of he's more on the critique side than the positive,
He's more of a
building side.
Heideggerian when he talks about community and dwelling too.
Hmm.
That's
Hmm.
yeah,
Do
which I mean
you want to
Zizek
get
is
into that?
not.
Want to
Yeah,
get into
sure.
it?
Well, I think like when it comes to Zizek, by the way, I ended up paying $90 to go see him debate Jordan Peterson back in the day. I live tweeted it, so
Really?
my money
Nice.
well spent. But anyways, yeah, it was quite exciting. That was really the heyday of like the bro theory cello, if you could
Hmm.
call it that.
Yeah.
But Zizek is interesting because if I recall in Less Than Nothing, taking off from Hegel, there's sort of recognition that there's no end to the dialectic, right? There's no end to like absolute spirit realizes itself, but then like there's that debate within Hegelian scholarship if there is an eschatology, right? I
All
mean,
right.
some people say no. I mean, maybe Zizek would say no, that there
Hmm.
is no like final terminus point. But I think Hegel, the man, he still was like a Lutheran, if I
I
recall.
agree.
So
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
but in terms of his philosophic system, but Hegel, when it comes to Zizek, it's interesting how he leaves off on the middle period of Foucault, even though he hates, Deleuze and he critiques the sort of French continental theorists. He still has very similar take to the middle period of Foucault, but then Foucault was later appropriated by the neoliberals, during the Care of the Self period, which was before he, and when the stuff he was doing in the 80s, which led to his death by, as I said, the Salivorium's disease. So, but you were talking about community and how the sort of commodification of being provides a full sense of that. Like when you read Byung-Chul Han, you do pick up his sense from Heidegger of dwelling, and of a dwelling that resists enframing. Enframing being what modern techniques and technology, this is the question concerning technology, enframing being every aspect of life through this critical rationality of techniques being essentially reduced to standing reserve. And the human subject later on becomes reduced to nothing more but standing reserve, the way that we talk about whole populations. But when it comes to the authenticity of a community, one that can truly exhibit what, Heidegger will call dwelling, which is the sense of a place that is rooted in our recognition of our mortality on the one end, which is the time aspect, but also the recognition of what we mutually create through culture and through the sort of enculturation that happens that is specifically tied to the geography and the location of somewhere. But what was the second part to your question about, you wanted to ask about that train of thinking? I'm starting to forget now. You mentioned Zizek about,
was it on authenticity?
Yeah, so Zizek believes that there's no such thing as authenticity. So he, more or less believes in what Adorno called the cult of authenticity.
Yeah.
And, of course that leads to fascism. So that's bad, that's wrong. But when it comes to Byung-Chul Han, what's interesting is that he gives a space to recognize that, there can be an authenticity, but it's very complicated. And in a way, at the very end of Psychopolitics, he has this chapter on idiotism, where you sort of become like a sort of neo-Socratic subject, where you essentially habituate yourself to an openness towards life that is kind of similar to, in Christianity, you have the idea of the holy fool, right?
Right.
And in Zen Buddhism, you have the idea of the Furabu, which is like the Zen wanderer, which is sort of like the homeless vagrant vagabond that sort of takes life as it comes. And so Byung-Chul Han is saying, well, you can't really escape psychopolitics. Even if you were to like go offline and touch grass, and it's like whatever these irony left people say, it's like touch grass, like go to a bush party. Oh, the best one actually is go and have sex, right?
Yeah.
But it's like, no, but even going and having sex is still influenced by what happens in this hyper-technical apparatus. What happens in the online world happens in real life, and vice versa. There is no separate. That's hyper-reality. That's the spectacle society that Baudrillard, took off from Debord, which is, what does Debord say? Like the spectacle essentially consumes the real, and the real consumes the spectacle. Yeah. Same with the online world. So Byung-Chul Han's like, well, you can't really escape it, because even if you were to log off, even if you were to go to some monastery, the world will still go on without you. Right. And you will still be subject to its machinations. So when it comes to the creation of community, this is one thing I kind of disagree with Byung-Chul Han, is that you're going to have to find a way to create an online community. What we're doing right now is probably an example of that. We're both Leafs, right? Unfortunately, but it's like, say you were like a lot of my friends who were, across the pond in England or other parts of Europe, or who are in America, who are hundreds of miles away. So it's like, I think the problem is that it comes to the creation of community through, and again, this is what Byung-Chul Han says in Philocracy, okay? This is the problem. And this is something that I, as someone who's a proponent of taking the online world seriously, because my God, look at me. Come on. I'm a creature of the internet. Just look at me. I look ridiculous. So, but I love it though. I love it. No, but he says something. It's this one chapter. What chapter is? Let me look it up. It's called not digital rationality. Oh, the end of communicative action. That's the chapter. So he says, okay, and he mentions Trump in 2016, which blew my mind. Right, like it just. Having been a product of that, even though I'm Canadian, still like the whole, what's that term from Virilio? Let's call it the digital Hiroshima that was Trumpism in 2016. the way that we look upon it with reverence. There is this one frog. I will always quote this in every podcast because it's one of my favorite quotes of all time. It comes from the frog Twitter poster. His name was Minoquion4. He had this tweet where he says, "Ever since 2016, we will always look for whispers and murmurs of it coming again. It is our bane. What do you say? It is our curse. It is our blessing."
Yeah.
To take up 2016. And I always thought that was so profound. I mean, what do you think this whole thing that's happening right now with a certain global rapper, that's basically trying to revive the spirit of 2016. So the reason I mentioned this is Byung-Chul Han says, okay, what happens when people, and he used 2016 Donald Trump as an example. What happens when you take an online community? And he mentions, maybe he's read my stuff because I only use this term, the online right, the e-right.
Yeah.
He used the term the e-right, the online right? So maybe, who knows? Maybe he's got a lurker account. You know, when it comes to the e-right, especially, also other online communities, right? Not like from left to right to you name it, like people that write video essays, you know. What is the thing that unites us all? What brings us together in the absence of real community, in the absence of something that brings us together? Knowledge and knowledge transfer and knowledge diffusion. He actually uses the term red pill. He says, okay, what is the red pill? Red pill is knowledge. Right. But more than that, it's knowing something that carries with it the signifier that you are a part of a community and a group. To be red pilled means that you are hip to what the in-group is online. But when you look at it, when it comes to like the world of dataism and psychopolitics, that's not a very good or stable basis of community, because all you have is just knowledge diffusion. And that in itself becomes this weird source of authenticity, because it's like, if you're not woke on the woman question, or you're not woke on that other question of that other group of people, then it's like, who, you know, you're blue pilled, you're cringe, or you're fed, by the way. That's another, you know. So knowledge becomes this price you pay to enter into an online community, more or less. But that in itself leads to the same problems that we have with psychopolitics, with big data, with the sort of commodification and the sort of splaying out and laying bare of all life, you know, online, the participatory panopticon they're always sunk into every day. That's the whole problem. And you mentioned hierarchy, right? Like, the problem, he says again, is that the internet is, I mean, it kind of is in a way. I mean, there's forces that have controlled the main organs and vectors of the internet. But when it comes to actual posting, it's non-hierarchical. Yeah. Yes, there's a big account, you know, I like to think I'm there, but really, honestly, you could say that you're a big account, but really, are you in the grand scheme of things? Yeah. In other words, there's a decentralization to all aspects, because the internet is an oceanic entity, more or less, right? So when you think of it, you know, there was this tweet that blew up the other day about hearing, it's like some TikTok, like some like sassy woke person saying, like, hearing a white Christian old man describe heaven as classless and genderless, blah, blah, blah. That's not the case. Yeah, maybe if you're, you know, maybe if, I don't know, some weirdo Protestant interpretation, like that not even Protestants believe, you know, heaven is hierarchically organized into celestial bodies, into a very stark kingdom-like hierarchy, monarchical arrangement that is approximating an aristocracy. But the online world nowadays is essentially not that. It's, you know, it's the dispersing of all hierarchy for a horizontal model of all being itself. That's what Byung-Chul Han says. And when you have that, that leads to the destruction of who your sense of self even is, and where you fit and who you are. That is, you know, it's corrosive at the end of the day, because you're forced to truly sort of arrange yourself within this, you know, non-spatial entity, which is almost near impossible. Like, you don't have, if you're lost in the ocean without a sextus, for instance, back in the day, like, it's like trying to navigate the ocean just from the stars, more or less. Right.